So I recently finished the memoirs of Mao Zedong's personal physician, something called The Private Life of Chairman Mao by Dr. Li Zhi-sui. And I have to say that it's a stunning read. There's so much here between the pages to think about, and I really had to split into two. This video is going to first talk about Mao Zedong the man, and I have another one coming up that talks about his politics and his political style. The introduction of the book had claimed that no other publication exists that has so much unvarnished information about someone who's globally important to history. Those people who lived through those events either never got their stories told, or they would rather kind of censor themselves. So it's amazing that several times that I'm reading through this that I had to check whether or not Dr. Lee even existed, that he actually did what he was said to have done, that he actually knew Chairman Mao. But in general, what he talks about syncs well with the historical facts, and the photographs in the insert indicates that Dr. Lee at least was associated with Chairman Mao pretty closely. Um, so um, let me get first started about my impression of Mao Zedong the man from reading this book. I get the sense that he is an immensely charismatic person with amazing powers of persuasion and political intuition, but at the same time, he has a rather poor understanding of economics and the value of human life. He has many weaknesses, and they often send him astray. He also is immensely paranoid, and much more so after specific events in the book. I believe the chairman, the party the highest levels of the party had bugged his living quarters, and that basically really sent him over the essential deep end. Nevertheless, you can really feel his charisma jumping out at you through the pages in the quote that Dr. Lee cites. He would ask you for your opinion like as if he cared for you, like on a personal level. And he seemed to have a pretty good job at actually acting it, of actually making you feel that way. And when you listen to what he says, he sounds like a very reasonable, kind of self aware man. There's a chunk in the book. Marxism didn't just drop from heaven, Mao would say. We shouldn't do everything according to the books, slavishly copying every word. He traced the party's slave mentality to China's Confucian past. So awed were Chinese by Confucius that they would not even call him by name, addressing him instead as sage. Now the party was similarly awed by Marxism, taking it as dogma and refusing to deviate an inch from the text. The irony of this is that at the end, people now cited Mao's quotations like as if they were Confucius's, which is unfortunate because Mao said a whole lot of contradictory stuff, as we will see later. And Mao also seemed to know how to make people feel at ease. He used aphorisms a lot. He used like little metaphors. Here's one where he was forgiving Dr. Lee's family background. If we all tried to follow the standards of you physicians, we wouldn't be able to live. Don't all living things need air and water and soil? Tell me which of these things is pure. I don't believe there's any pure air, any pure water, pure soil. If you put a fish in distilled water, how long do you think it would live? And Mao seems quite self aware, at least when it benefits him. Here, after an argument with Dr. Lee, he says, "It's not so easy to work for me, is it?" he said. I smiled too. Getting upset is just one of my weapons, he told me. When they force me to do something I don't want to do, I get upset. Then I don't have to do it. I got upset so I would have to have the physical. Don't worry about my temper tantrum. I've always thought we should criticize both each other and ourselves. If I do anything wrong in the future, tell me. What I don't like is people talking behind my back. So for lack of a better term, he wanted you to like him. He had a kind of a chill, sort of like fatherly, avuncular demeanor to do it. But I'm not really sure if a person should actually criticize Chairman Mao Zedong right in his face. He would actually use this sort of sardonic, almost provocative sort of way of speaking to bring out your own views on his policies and his thinking and about him. That way he could jump on it and use it to his advantage. And let's not get caught up in thinking that like this guy is some sort of cuddly, cute teddy bear. Mao is a true sociopath in that he does not really care about other people's lives. He lost several of his children, his brother, and one of his wives during the wars, the wars leading to the CCP takeover of China, and his struggles have sort of, I guess, inoculated him against feeling empathetic for another human being. He seems not to care about the suffering of his people during the Great Leap Forward or the Cultural Revolution. We have so many people, he would say. We can afford to lose a few. What difference does it make? This statement might be tied to his cavalier way of speaking, and it really does. Like, he says some really controversial stuff that literally no one else would be able to say. Like, seriously righteous stuff that would get anyone else shot. For example, he talks about Chiang Kai-shek and his own personal liking of Chiang. It almost seems like they were friends. You have to remember that at this point in time, the Chiang regime was one of the country's greatest foes. But yet at the same time, Mao praised the Northern Expedition of 1926-27. He praised, and as well as Chiang and Mao's shared belief in the indivisibility of China. Another time he met with the Prime Minister of Japan and told that Prime Minister, I believe it was Tanaka, that he was basically grateful that the Japanese had invaded China as it helped to weaken the Kuomintang and allowed the CCP to take over. This is the sort of stuff that no other CCP official would ever be allowed to say since then, and today. And later on, here's a third example. Later on, Mao pretty much ended the Great Leap Forward when he visited. He ended the kind of like the ideological statement where the famine kept going on. He ended the Great Leap Forward's ideological underpinnings when he visited his home village and spoke to the folks there. The folks had been starving and complained to him about the problems that the Great Leap Forward policies, in which Mao had pledged to leapfrog the amount of steel made by Great Britain in just 15 years, a goal which Mao seemed to have made up spontaneously, by the way. The villagers were talking about how much of a trouble it was for them. And Mao listened and said, "If you can't fill your bellies at the public dining hall, then it's better just to disband it," Mao said. "It's a waste of food. And as for the water conservancy project, I don't think every rural community has to build a reservoir. And the reservoirs are not built well, there will be big problems. And if you cannot produce good steel, you might as well quit." Like, holy shit, right? Like, then again, like, there's a whole bunch about Mao that should have applied to him, but did not. For example, his father is a rich peasant, and and Mao himself became one of the richest men in China based solely on the sales of his books. Had he not been Mao Zedong, he might have been prosecuted as an enemy of the people. At the same time, he extolled the virtues of the poor, but lived like an emperor, with hundreds of women at his beck and call, super security. He had villas in pretty much every province. There was one incident where he wanted people, even high-level party members, to do back-breaking work. He said, "You intellectuals only know how to talk and write. You have no idea what it is to do manual labor. It is not idle talk when I say intellectuals ought to do manual labor every now and then. It's a way to get close to the masses and to appreciate the collective power of the people." And then later he says, "Normally we big shots are waited on by others. Now it is our turn to do some manual labor ourselves. Everyone says it's good to do some manual labor, but once they actually start working, they change their minds." Yet at the same time, the only work that Mao himself ever did whilst as chairman was less than half an hour long. He was digging at a reservoir and basically said, "It's been so long since I've done so much work, so little effort, and already I'm dripping with sweat." And then he went to the tent for tea. So throughout the entire book, I got the sense of a really bitter person reflecting on a major portion of his life and coming to the conclusion that it did not turn out the way he wanted to. At the book's ending, Dr. Li writes that he has lost his home and his state. He is unwanted, and his family life has sundered apart after the death of his wife. Dr. Li began his story positive on the potential good that the communists could have done for China, but soured at the end at peeking behind the curtain and seeing it to be that Mao was just another emperor.